Expert musicians sound great in the practice room. Now, not always, but most of the sounds that they make are really beautiful. And you may think after hearing that, of course, expert musicians sound great in the practice room. They're great musicians. They sound great all the time. But that's not quite the whole story. Experts perform as beautifully as they do because they've developed the habit of making mostly beautiful sounds in the practice room. That's how they've gotten so good. Let me tell you what I mean. As part of my work at the Center for Music Learning, I've been able to watch recordings of a lot of really excellent musicians practicing. And here's one I'd like to share with you from my old friend David Byrd-Marrow, a spectacular horn player, working on the third movement of the Brahms Horn Trio. Now, in this 45-second clip, notice how many of the sounds that he makes that are truly beautiful. Amazing, right? But here's the thing. Musicians at every skill level can learn more effectively by playing things in the practice room that are mostly beautiful. In one of the most important published research papers on music practice, Bob Duke, Amy Simmons, and Carla Cash outline some key behaviors that separate the very best practicers from the rest of us. Now, the whole paper is worth a read for anyone that wants to improve their practice or deepen their understanding of how effective practice really works. But one of the most interesting findings from the data is that optimal learning is not associated with the number of trials that a musician plays during practice. More repetitions is not the same as more improvement. Optimal learning is associated with the number of accurate trials. In other words, great practicers don't necessarily do more stuff in the practice room, but what they do play is mostly beautiful, just as they intend to sound. That's not to say there aren't mistakes in great practice. I mean, in this 45-second clip, David clearly notices a couple of intervals that aren't quite as resonant and even as he wants them to sound. But he winces a little bit and he stops, and then he immediately goes back and isolates that problematic interval until it's beautiful. Mistakes like this are usually a little surprising, slightly displeasing, and importantly, they're required for David to change what he does the next repetition to make that interval as beautiful as all the others. See, it's the choices that David makes during practice that allow him to sound mostly beautiful. He chooses which notes to play, at what tempo, how loud to play, when to use a metronome, how to shape a phrase, when to sing a phrase, when to take a break, when to stop, and lots of other stuff to stay mostly beautiful. This is how beautiful sounds come to be habit. Decisions made to shape difficulty optimally during practice are true habits of great musicians, operating without the need to really think about them. In fact, choices like this are such a fundamental part of effective practice that great musicians probably don't even realize that they're doing it unless somebody points it out. So, wherever you are in the skill spectrum, in your next practice session, try designing your practice so that more of the sounds you make are exactly the way you intend to sound. Oftentimes, this is going to mean working on smaller units of music, or maybe music at a slower tempo, or better yet, actually practicing easier music. And here's what'll happen. Most of the sounds you make will be truly great. And then you're going to notice and be a little bothered by smaller, more subtle deviations from how you really want that music to sound. And this is exactly what leads to more subtle refinements and movements that can now emerge because most of what you're playing is so great. So go be like David Byrd-Marrow and learn more effectively by making more great sounds.